Are you or were you in a relationship with someone who made you feel like you had to walk on eggshells? And as a result, do you struggle with hypervigilance? Do you struggle with feeling like you have to be taking the temperature, reading all of the things happening, in the room, outside the room, the sounds, the smells, the noises, the facial expressions, the tone of voice shifts in a relationship you're in now? And the one you're in now shouldn't require you to do that, but you were trained in childhood to be that way. Or have you basically, like we often do, unconsciously chosen a partner where you do the same things? Today's video, briefly, welcome to my Loved series, is just about reminding you about what happens in your body and to pay attention to the nature of eggshell response that often might be playing out in your relationships. So some videos here are going to be really focused on directives for the day. They're always going to have things that I think that will be hopefully helpful for you to think about each day. But also videos will have topics and conversations and recommendations and things like that. All types of therapy and trauma related terms and ways to kind of help you understand yourself, if that makes sense. So I want to refer to this book, Stop Walking on Eggshells, especially if you were someone who believes they were raised by a parent or parents who may have struggled with some form of untreated and undiagnosed narcissism. Could be trauma, could be borderline, could be bipolar, but whatever it was, it felt like there wasn't a way to sort of assess what was going to happen next. And so you learned to always be on guard, and now your nervous system is it's just like always on alert, and it doesn't feel like you know how to relax. Really quickly, here are some examples and the questions this book goes through, kind of doing an assessment to see if, this does apply to you. So, is the relationship always focused on this other person's needs or wants and never on yours? This is how your eggshellness is kind of showing up or showed up in childhood. Have you begun to lose track of your own needs and wants? Does the person you love make unreasonable demands to the point where you feel like, never mind, I can't say no, it's not worth it? Have you tried to explain your point of view a million zillion times, and no matter what, they won't own their part, they won't hear you, and so you just think, you know what, I'm not sure they're even capable of owning their part or hearing me? Does the person that you had this experience with show really no true empathy and no ability to own and repair the parts that may have hurt you or hurt you historically? Do they act normal in front of others, but behind the scenes insult you, call you names, or just don't treat you very well when you're alone? Or did they? When you fight or get in a disagreement, or when you try to assert yourself, was it all about winning and not about understanding and healing? Do you feel like the person that you're with just talks in circles or over-explains things or tries to confuse you or use your words against you in order to win arguments? Do they blame and criticize you pretty consistently and even obsessively? Do they say things that just make no sense, not even possible in the real world, or through the lens of justification? Makes you feel kind of crazy? Is it clear that they don't really know who you are, the way they talk to you, treat you, or judge you? Do you feel like saying, don't you know who I am, or didn't you know who I was? Is the focus of their intense, violent, or irrational rages the kind that just grow quickly and out of proportion, just to the point where you don't even know what started them, but it's their 0 to 60 is massive? Do you feel like you've been manipulated or lied to, or that they'll say whatever they need to say to win an argument or to make you feel like you're crazy or don't know what you're talking about? Do they need to always be in control? Do they have meltdowns or lose it when things don't go their way? And it could be the littlest thing or the biggest thing. Do you feel like, basically they don't really have any true emotional intelligence or maturity? Even if they seem that way, they could be a therapist, they could be a president of some company, they could be, a relatively seemingly person who has it together, but when it really comes down to it, they don't. Do you feel exhausted, confused, spread too thin, overwhelmed, depressed, hopeless, or frustrated, or completely misunderstood in this relationship? Or did you feel like that? So the point is, if that was happening in some version, you see the pattern again and again and again, especially in your childhood, what you learned is that you being truly seen as a person, number one, isn't going to happen. Number two, you have to wrap yourself around them and rotate around their needs, which is basically very common in more anxious and more disorganized attachment patterns, where you're overexposed to their state of mind, you're overexposed to their mood, their feelings, their adult issues. And now, as a result, you've really learned in your body to live in fight or flight. Meaning that at any moment, like I said in the beginning, it's like you're always scanning for what comes next. If that is you, one of the most important things to start working on is your fight or flight pattern. Now, it might look like panic. It might look like frequent irritability and anger. Remember that anxiety and that kind of wiring can also look like truly frustration. And why is my parent always mad, or my partner? What is wrong with them? They're so irritable. And you're an over-absorber, an over-reader of everyone's emotions because of that eggshell childhood, that now you make meaning out of everything. It's like all of their problems, all of their feelings. If they're unhappy, you're unhappy. You have a really hard time separating. So 2 things for this video. The first one is to begin to make a list of all the times and places and things that you find yourself triggered into fight or flight. Do you pay attention to the way they make the coffee in the morning? Do they slam the cabinets? Do you, when they make a deep sigh, automatically assume that you did something wrong? Do you overly pay attention to, like I've mentioned in so many videos, the sound of the garage, the cars in the driveway, how they slam the medicine cabinet, whatever it is? And do you make meaning out of that? That's the first thing. To literally sit down and write out all of the places in your life where you kind of go into that, I've got to be prepared to know what to do. And I want you to do that if you're willing, because I think it will help you realize how much of your life is at your job, with your kids, with your partner, with your pets. We can get into a whole bunch of stuff about sensory triggers and issues, which can make us irritable and add to that fight or flight, right? But if you're in a bad mood and your dog won't stop barking, it's annoying. And so you're more likely to yell. But the point is to look at every part of your life. That's the first thing. And to then begin to assess, okay, how am I and where am I reenacting this eggshell childhood in my relationships, right? So do I have a partner that's like this? Or am I the one now, because I had a parent like this, that I force others to walk on eggshells? Am I irritable a lot? Or do I have a lot of mood shifting? And to begin to honor that until you start to become aware of that fight or flight will be your go-to in almost any situation. That is often your strongest trauma response pattern. Going back to the trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And then we also have collapse and submit, and attach, cry out for help. And I've made a lot of videos on those. I'm going to talk more about these. But I want you to just first get really clear on if fight or flight if those are your predominant patterns, where, like I said, and how often are you doing it? And what is the price you're paying? And today, just for today, try to observe every single time you feel that, like that squeeze in your heart, that tightening in your stomach. Take your hands, maybe you just do some rocking back and forth. And just keep taking some deep breaths until you can calm that feeling in your body. Maybe you'd like to do those havening exercises, right? Where you do this. Maybe it's just breathing or tapping. Maybe it's just closing your eyes, taking a deep breath in, pausing, and then deep, dramatic sighs 4 times, like a square. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and pause for 4. Just for today, I want you to, if you're willing, begin to notice how often and where that happens, and to observe that there might be, not always, in fact, a lot of the time maybe not, but there are places to become aware, and that you can have some control. A lot of this is about taking our control back in childhood where we had no control, right? If mommy or daddy, parent is screaming and yelling, I have no control. I stay in fight or flight. And now I do it because I was wired to do that. But the work is beginning to understand that I can change those patterns. I'm not going to become a different person and like never have that, because that's irrational and not possible. But I can begin to take some control back and shift the experience in my body around fight or flight. So that's it for today. Don't forget that you truly are loved and lovable. You are. It doesn't feel like it a lot of the time, I know, but you are. And one of the ways that you tell yourself, not just that mentally, but you live it, is you start to give yourself the things you didn't get, like safety. Safety is one of the most important things in every relationship, and only you can give it to yourself. So stay safe. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.